Welcome back to the studio. I'm with Sister Barak Hussain and today we're discussing bullying. So my next question to you is about getting the school involved or not, because children usually they get scared to tell their parents that they're being bullied firstly, and then they're scared of school involvement because sometimes it can make the bullies worse. So what would your advice be in respect to that?
It's almost a double-edged sword, you could say. And I would say this depends on the child. If the child is of strong character, then whether they're strong character or not, the school needs to know that this aggression is happening. They have to be very delicate in terms of how they go about connecting with the bully, because like you said, it definitely can get worse. And I've seen that as well. A lot of young people come in talking about it made things worse when my parents did get involved or they did speak. But I can't stress enough how important it is for the child to have a safe relationship with the parents where they can go, first of all, trust them and tell them or tell another adult. And it is important that the school is aware of this to stop this behavior. We don't want to hear about children in our community killing themselves because of bullying, because that is the case, and we've heard of cases like that. So it is important to connect with the school. It can be done very delicately through the counselor, the social worker, or the psychologist that is involved with the school. And a lot of schools now have anti-bullying day. We had that last week in Canada, where wearing pink to promote that. And my daughter would come in from school, and they would have. The school would request that the children would wear that, and so they would have a day of activities around anti-bullying. And so we see more and more of that. It's not accepted, it's not tolerated, because we see the effects on the mental health of the children. So it is important to bring it to the attention of the school, the principal. I leave it at the parents' discretions in terms of how they would go about it. Do not make this more anxious, provoking for your child. Stay calm. Your child needs your support and compassion, not you flipping into a rage over what's happening to them. Because when your child witnesses you becoming upset over this, it can make it more scary for them, because it was hard enough to come and disclose this. So you have to be very tactful, very smart about it, and very delicate, because it can go the other way, where the bully can make things definitely worse.
And sometimes your child is the victim of bullying, let's say, because they're different. And we try and encourage our children it's okay to be different. It's okay, you should be an individual. But then sometimes that can be the reason why they get bullied. So should we be encouraging our children to be individuals and be different? Or are we actually, sort of like building them up to be victims of bullies?
It's a really good question. I'm all about encouraging somebody to be themselves, discover your talents, your strengths, your abilities, work on the things that you want to improve. And parents, and especially within our communities, we don't want our children to be all engineers, all doctors. There's so much more in between. And this is encouraged also from our own faith, from what Imam Ali alayhi salam says, not to raise your children the same way that you were raised. Go with the generation and the times that you were in. And so I interpret this from a psychological point of view, in terms of encourage your children to find their abilities and be unique and really lift them that way. Yes, they could be a target of aggression and bullying. So what do? Do we stop our children from being themselves, or do we tackle the issue of bullying? So not to limit your child. Yes, there is such a thing as, as in when you're in Rome, there is that concept as well, but that's learning how to be part of a team and still keep your uniqueness and your strengths, right? We should not limit our children. It's the issue of the bullying that we need to tackle. So when your child is unique or different, encourage that. But at the same time, encourage teamwork skills, encourage interpersonal skills, encourage learning how to work with other people and getting along with other people, and showing compassion and kindness as well, instilling that, and instilling the love that we have from our upbringing and our aqaid and traditions from the love of Ahlul Bayt and what they taught us, and instill that within our own children, And again, tackling the issue of bullying rather than holding and making our children, just painting them with one brush.
Yeah. So sometimes with bullying, I feel that it can either be something to do with the personality of the child, and sometimes it could be the physical appearances. So it could be that your child is not very hygienic and isn't kept very well, and
But then whose responsibility is that?
Yeah. So what should we be, educating parents in terms of not making their children the victims of bullies?
That's a very loaded question, I would say, because there's a lot to do with it than parents making the child the victim.
Yeah.
If we go back deeper, let's look at the family situation. Why is the child not hygiene? Why is their hygiene not upkept?
Yeah.
What's going on in the home? Is there abuse going on in the home from men to women or women to men? What is happening there that is causing this child to be different at school, to be picked on in terms of the family dynamics? That's mostly the case here.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, you see the odd child who is not very strong in character but has incredibly supportive and loving families. But perhaps this child is suffering from a mental illness, such as depression, which can be genetically linked as well, not necessarily just, the nurture around this child. So we really have to go back to the root of what's happening in the home. And this is an issue we always talk about: the home, the family unit. The father treating the mother a certain way, the mother treating the father a certain way, siblings. So that's how I would look at that dynamic, is to work on the family issues. And, if the parents are in a state of mind because there could be trauma there with the mother or the father in dealing with these problems, if they can't take care of themselves, how are they taking care of their children? And we see that a lot of families who experience violence in the home or domestic violence are still very highly functioning people.
Yeah.
They're still very functioning at work, functioning in, meals that are prepped, or clothes that are ready and whatnot. But it's the emotional issues that are happening there, that they don't have enough, they don't have the ability to give and provide that to the child because they're dealing with their own trauma, especially if they're not getting support or help. And when you're talking about violence in the home, it's very detrimental on the child development. And so that could have its effect on the child in terms of being withdrawn at school, or not dressed properly. And so when we say your child is being a victim of bully, like I said, it's very loaded that way. It's obviously the parent is not deliberately doing that, of course, but when you're not aware of what's happening because of the trauma the parent is experiencing, it will be very hard to take care of your child that way and providing them the emotional support that they need.
Okay, moving on to my next question, which is about disability. So I think in our communities, when you have a disabled child, you tend to sort of mollycoddle them, keep them at home, you don't want them to be seen. But ultimately, they need to go out and they need to be part of the community and integrate with society. But that can also sometimes be a reason or a target for bullies. So in that situation, what do you do if you do have a disabled child? Do you shelter them and keep them at home? Do you send them out and then, risk them being targets?
Very interesting, because this is an area in our community we have not really worked through. Yeah. And or giving the proper attention to people who are disabled yet very able. Yeah. And there's a sister in Toronto, Sister Anisa Khan, who is a huge advocate for Muslims living with disabilities, who really talks about having access in our centers, and how sad it is sometimes in our centers where these people want to come and attend the lectures, the majalis, but have to sit in the parking lot or in the car and wait for family to come out. They can't come into the centers. So think about that. How will that affect the person who's in the wheelchair who cannot come into the center, for example? So to answer your question, this is a topic we need to be paying more attention to within our community, to accept and welcome everybody, just how the Prophet used to welcome everybody from all backgrounds. These centers are not just for the able, it's for everybody to be there. And so how does this affect our children? Of course it's going to affect our children. Now, if we look at I'm talking about the Canadian Society, and especially at my university, we have an amazing program called the Paul Menton Center, where it's the Center for Students with Disabilities, whether it's physical or mental. And so we provide access to students, and my center works very closely with them, whether it's through diagnosis of what kind of learning disability the student may have, in order to provide the proper support to reach their full potential. I have seen so many clients from different backgrounds who, when you look at them, you say, how can they get on in life? Whether, they don't, whatever disability physical that they have, yet mashallah, with the supports that are in place, these people are earning university degrees, and there are programs that we have where it's imperative that people hire people of disabled backgrounds because they don't believe that they're limited. They're able if you provide the proper supports. Why am I saying this? Because this is lacking within our own communities on a mental level, meaning the judgment that we have towards people with disabilities, that they're not able and they do not have the ability to reach their full potential. Yeah. And so with that mentality, how does that trickle on the child? It really does affect the children who are living with physical or mental abilities, that this is how the community looks at them. Yet if you look at other communities, there's amazing supports in place. People come to Carleton University because we have this program to help students reach their full abilities. As Muslims, we are supposed to be the epitome of compassion and love and support. Yet this is one area that we are lacking, that we definitely need to be working on, and not having people in wheelchairs in the parking lot listening for Majalis Aba Abdullah Al-Hussein, for example. And this is the reality of what happens. So how does this affect the mentality of a child who does not feel included in the community? I remember this Arba'iniya in Ottawa. We had a gentleman in the wheelchair who was coming down the street in his wheelchair, Labbaika Ya Hussein. And it was a beautiful event this year where we all came together from the different communities, the Shia communities in Ottawa, and a big gathering up on our Parliament Hill. And I saw this man in his wheelchair holding the sign proudly, and he felt included. And I just felt so proud to see that a man in a wheelchair was part and coming. And we see that, for example, in the ziyaras, all the people that come, with one leg or in a wheelchair or whatever. The message is there in our faith, yet the judgment, the lack of understanding and compassion within our own community, especially when it comes to mental health and disability, it's rampant. And these are the things that we're working so hard on to bring more awareness to. You can see I'm getting emotional, passionate about it, because why should these people be excluded from our community when these are the most vulnerable and the ones that the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt used to love and want to reach their full potential, to give to the Imam and be there for the Imam? Why are they excluded?
You speak about compassion. How can we teach our children compassion and raise compassionate children so they don't turn around and become bullies?
Do we not have that in the essence of our upbringing, of our faith? It's all there. Yeah. It's all there, yet we forget who we are. We forget who our faith, or what our faith is. We forget the teachings of our Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and what they taught us when it comes down to actually applying the principles of what they exhibited. I mean, I'm not a scholar, but let's just look at Karbala and what the lessons that it taught us there. Why do we just say, Labbaika Ya Hussein, the days of Muharram, but not every single day? And this is where it comes down to really living the full experience. And this is how we teach compassion to our children, by using these examples daily in our lives, not just at specific times of the year. This has to be within the programs that we have. And alhamdulillah, I see that. I see that in the centers in Ottawa. I've seen a few things here in London. I've attended a few majalis, and I know the different youth clubs, they work on that. But it has to be in the home. This is where it starts. It has to be in the schools, the basic teachings. I'll give you an example of non-Muslims, people that I know, who, and she's a social worker, a former colleague of mine at Carleton, where she brought kittens into the home, baby cats, for her 2 sons to take care of. And she said, I deliberately did this. Why? I wanted to teach my boys compassion, how to take care of kittens. MashaAllah, her son now is a counselor and he works with me now in the same office. And I see the compassion there. Yeah. And so it starts with these kinds of examples. It starts again, as I was saying earlier, in the home. How the mother treats and respects the father. How the father values and respects his wife. A daughter will look at her father, how he treats her mother. Yeah. And a mother will look at her, a child will look at the mother, how she's treating the father. And so it really does start there. It's a huge responsibility that we have when families decide to have children. Why are you bringing children into the world if you're not going to be raising them properly? Don't take that responsibility. If you are not capable, do not have children. Because it is a huge responsibility that you have, especially on the path that we have. And as Muslim, Shia Muslims, what path are you on? What are you preparing yourself and your children? And this is the work that we do with, all of us have something to contribute to the Imam. And I believe what we're doing with our mental health awareness is huge in preparing the warriors, the men and women, in terms of having confidence, strong self-esteem, assurance, love, compassion, by having healthy minds and healthy bodies. And we forget that. And this is inclusive of everybody, whether you're physically disabled, mentally disabled, whatever it is. There's no separation. I don't believe there's any separation, but there's so much of that in our community. Again, because of the learned behaviors, the cycling pattern that continue where they don't break the cycle of abuse, they don't break the cycle of violence, they don't care and go back to the root of our faith, which is all there. Sorry, very long-winded answer, but again, I always come back to our faith, which is all about psychology. You look at the word Islam, salam. What does that mean? Peace. And I was talking about that in my seminar yesterday, inshallah, in Australia, when I'm heading there to talk about this. It's the root right there, but this is from a different angle that we don't talk about. Attaining that inner peace, how do you do that? Through your spirituality, through your mental health, through your connection with Him, and through your connection with everybody as well. And so we don't look at it that way, and we miss that when it comes to mental health and psychology. We right away attribute that to madness, to junoon, to being crazy, when in fact it's quite the opposite when you're constantly working on yourself to reach that self-actualization.
Sister Barak, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
My pleasure too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Viewers at home, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.